Terror by mail. CBS News brings you the evidence in the envelopes, what was written in those notes carrying anthrax, and why they have Congress, newsrooms, and mailrooms coast to coast on high alert. The U.S. introduces a new weapon in the war against terrorists and Taliban targets in Afghanistan. And Eye on America. Americans line up for anthrax tests, but how reliable are the results?
This is the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather reporting from CBS News headquarters in New York.
Good evening. Anthrax was the talk of this nation again today. Who has it, who's at risk of getting it, and who is sending it through the mail? CBS has the very latest on all this tonight. We begin with the investigation of what the U.S. government now labels as terrorism. CBS News correspondent Jim Stewart has new information about who may be behind the attempts at murder by mail.
U.S. officials are now convinced that in the midst of Osama bin Laden's war with the United States, someone else, perhaps another terrorist or a domestic crackpot, has launched his own campaign of bioterrorism. Sources say the same person mailed letters containing very high-grade anthrax to Senator Tom Daschle and NBC headquarters in New York. One had a fake return address. Both letters were postmarked Trenton, New Jersey. The letter to NBC was mailed September 16th, the one to Daschle October the 8th. Both letters contained about 40 words in stiff grade school English and were hand-printed. September the 11th, 2001, they read, "Death to America, death to Israel, Allah is great." Another added, "Have you taken your penicillin today?" Sources say the letters could have been written by someone who studied English as a second language, but that is not certain. One investigator said both letters were odd and, quote, read like a nutcase. Whoever they are, officials agreed there is only one word for them.
Anytime someone sends anthrax through the mail, it's an act of terror. It's terrorism. And we treat it as an act of terror and terrorism.
But there is nothing thus far that indicates it is Osama bin Laden-sponsored terrorism.
While organized terrorism has not been ruled out, so far we have found no direct link to organized terrorism.
Meanwhile, the FBI has checked with 6 major laboratories which have stores of similar high-grade anthrax. None is missing, agents reported. It is possible, one official suggested, that the spores were homegrown by someone with skill. At the moment, most investigators just don't believe this is organized terrorism. The pattern is too small. The method of delivery is too limited. The payoff is too uncertain, they say. Their best guess is that someone else is doing this for reasons that probably make no sense at all. Dan?
Jim Stewart live in Washington.